Shaking headlines for this week of February the 10th. Hypocrisy rules. Amidst complaints of Russian interference in the U.S., McCain and Graham incite conflict in Ukraine against Russia. Euro Parliament slam. Nigel Farage puts politicians in their place over their complaints of Trump and their own blatant hypocrisy. The elusive reset. Bix Weir comments that a shift will happen soon, while Trump hints it may come sooner than many think. And listen to your heart. Turns out science has something to say about the truth of listening to one's heart over one's brain. Most of the time.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. Unfortunately, it appears that things may be once again starting to heat up in Ukraine. Even though President Trump has not made any specific declarations of military activity in Ukraine, there are forces that are actively engaged in reigniting the conflict. This is very likely because Trump has been avoiding being critical of Russia and of Putin, and the forces that want Trump removed are attempting to draw him into a conflict that he really has no plans of getting into. Let's try to make some sense as to where all this is coming from. On February 9th, RT reported that Donald Trump will not seek a conflict with Moscow as he does not see Russia as a threat to U.S. interests, but may be drawn into it by the security establishment or a provocative incident, like a chance military encounter in Syria, George Zamouli told RT. Zamouli, a senior research fellow at Global Policy Institute at London Metropolitan University, told RT the president senses, and he's sensed it for a while, that there's a kind of permanent government in the United States, the national security establishment, and it is very anxious to provoke a confrontation between the United States and Russia. The researcher suggests President Trump is going to concentrate on fighting Islamic terrorism and restoring America's economic prowess, rather than on Russia. His instinct is that Russia is not the United States' main adversary. The main adversary geopolitically is ISIS, or jihadism in general, and America's economic problems, and therefore that involves relations with China and how America can get jobs back, Zamouli argued. However, there's going to be more and more pressure on him, and there's a real danger that some sort of a provocative incident might leave Trump no other option than being drawn into the conflict, says the researcher. Trump is in a very delicate position of not wanting to fan flames with Russia, but also not wanting to be seen as a Russian agent. He is needing to address the clear Russophobia that exists in the hearts of the Republican Party. Where is it coming from? If you said Senators John McCain and Lindsey Graham, then you would be correct. While the warmongers in the U.S. Capitol attempt to smear and tear down Tulsi Gabbard for her so-called unauthorized fact-finding mission to Syria that led to her condemnation of her country funding and training terrorists, another video has now surfaced online showing the same warmongers going to Ukraine to instruct the troops to launch an offensive against Russia, and that they would go back to the U.S. and continue to push for sanctions against Russia. Simply another case of cabal elitists going into another country and asking the poor and middle class to kill brothers and sisters who have been labeled as an enemy because they do not follow the agenda of U.S. and Western hegemony. An article on the YourNewsWire.com website on February 6th reported it this way. A video has surfaced online in which warmongers John McCain and Lindsey Graham are caught meeting with the Ukraine military, encouraging them to launch an offensive against Russia and restart hostilities, all the while describing Russia as the aggressor that must pay a heavier price. Lindsey Graham delivers an incendiary speech in the video, egging on the Ukrainian troops to restart hostilities with Russia. Here is what Graham and McCain said to the troops in Ukraine on January 2nd, with Ukraine President Poroshenko present.
I admire the fact that you will fight for your homeland. Your fight is our fight. 2017 will be the year of offense. All of us will go back to Washington and we will push the case against Russia. Enough of a Russian aggression. It is time for them to pay a heavier price. Our fight is not with the Russian people but with Putin. Our promise to you is to take your cause to Washington, inform the American people of your bravery, and make the case against Putin to the world.
I believe you will win. I am convinced you will win, and we will do everything we can to provide you with what you need to win. And we have succeeded not because of equipment, but because of your courage. So I thank you, and the world is watching. And the world is watching because we cannot allow Vladimir Putin to succeed here. Because if he succeeds here, he will succeed in other countries.
My heart bleeds with compassion and sadness that uninformed men in a foreign land are risking their lives to promote a U.S. agenda that not only harms Ukrainians and their homeland, but also harms Russia and ultimately the rest of the world. The Ukrainian army did, in fact, start an escalation of the conflict with forces in eastern Ukraine in the Donbass region. A Sputnik News article on February 4th reported the following. This week, the situation in southeastern Ukraine took a turn for the worse, with clashes intensifying between Kiev forces and Donetsk People's Republic militia. Concerned by the situation, opposition bloc Rada lawmaker Vadim Novinsky reminded President Petro Poroshenko of his 2014 election campaign pledge to end the war in the Donbass. The article added that each side is accusing the other of initiating the violence. Much of the Western mainstream media, meanwhile, has accused Moscow of using the violence to test President Trump. Russian observers countered, suggesting that the spike in the violence is a blatant attempt by Kiev to derail the possible normalization in Russian-U.S. relations. It seems that Poroshenko's idea of ending the conflict is to blow the eastern Ukrainians to pieces, choosing instead to be a puppet for McCain and Graham. It has also not helped at all that President Poroshenko burned his bridge with President Trump. RT reported on February 7th that the Ukrainian president exposed his preference for Clinton during the U.S. presidential campaign, explains Daniel McAdams, executive director at the Ron Paul Institute, adding that it could have resulted in a change of tone in the U.S. after Trump's win. McAdams also added these comments, stating that, first of all, it is very significant that President Trump spoke with Yulia Tymoshenko before he spoke with Petro Poroshenko. I am certain that move was heard very loudly in Kiev. McAdams is referring to an encounter recently between Trump and Tymoshenko, when she was attending an event in the U.S. But let's not forget, Poroshenko jumped into the fray during the presidential campaign. He was caught doing some things to try to help Hillary Clinton get elected. Not very much reported in the U.S. media, but it certainly is a fact that he was involved. So he exposed himself. He exposed his preference for Hillary Clinton to win the presidency. So when Trump won, he put himself in a pretty bad position. Maybe that is why Trump wanted to talk to Tymoshenko. Maybe he has other ideas for who should lead Ukraine. RT noted that numerous Ukrainian officials posted derogatory Twitter postings about Trump, postings that were later removed after Trump won the election. In commenting about this, and whether Poroshenko might be on Trump's bad side, McAdams noted the video about McCain and Graham. McAdams was quoted as saying that, I don't know that he is in hot water, but he is also, don't forget, getting mixed signals from the U.S. There was this extraordinary trip that Senators McCain and Graham took to the front lines in Ukraine on January 2nd, where Graham said on video, telling the U.S. troops that you need to go on the offensive in 2017. He also said that when we get home, we're going to make sure that we punish Russia. What kind of signal does this send to the Ukrainians when they urge soldiers to go on the offensive? By the way, very shortly after that, they told them this, they did start the new offensive, as mentioned moments ago. There is a real crisis in Washington, and this is the president's own party. The president, according to our Constitution, has a broad leeway in making foreign policy. Certainly, Congress, the Senate, and the House have an important oversight role. But from this tape we saw of the senators in Ukraine, they are clearly making U.S. policy in a way to undermine the policy of their own president. I just can't see President Trump not doing something to put a stop to this. An article from Sputnik News on February 9th reported on a trip to the eastern Ukraine city of Donetsk by members of the Czech Retired Soldiers for Peace organization. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Ivan Krachovil described it this way. We arrived in Rostov-on-Don because this is the only way foreigners can possibly get to Donbass. Russian border guards keep a close eye on the border, but if your intentions are good, they will let you through. Donbass lives on. The local stores are full of fresh meat, eggs, and sausages made from real meat, and all this is available at prices everyone can afford. Western values, such as artificial meat, genetically modified food, and so on, are happily missing in this location. We didn't see many cars in the streets of Donetsk, but public transportation operates with clockwork precision. Bus fares just 3 rubles, and there is no crime at all. Grenade explosions are heard all across the city from morning till dark, holes gaping in the walls, a 9-story building without windows, several apartments with neither floors nor ceilings, dead and wounded people, mostly women and children. The men are manning the defense lines. During our brief stay in the city, the Kiev military launched several attacks. The people of Donetsk are fighting for survival, for their future of their children and everyone else. The article notes how the conflict is escalating once again across the Donbass region, coming after the little talk that Graham and McCain gave to Poroshenko and the Ukraine troops. It is important to remind people that it was the U.S. that started the whole revolution at Maidan Square in the capital city of Kiev back in 2014. Some may recall the conversation that was recorded and leaked online between U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and Eurasian Affairs, Victoria Nuland, and U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt, planning the installation of Arseniy Yatsenyuk as Prime Minister. They spoke of receiving the help of the UN to glue a deal together that would see Yatsenyuk, or Yats, as Nuland calls him, put into the leadership role. Yatsenyuk became Prime Minister and served in the position until April of 2016, when he resigned, accusing politicians of not working together to create real change for Ukraine. Here are the highlights of that phone call.
What do you think?
I think we're in play. The Klitschko piece is obviously the complicated electron here, especially the announcement of him as Deputy Prime Minister. And you've seen some of my notes on the troubles in the marriage right now, so we're trying to get a read really fast on where he is on this stuff. But I think your argument to him, which you'll need to make, I think that's the next phone call we want to set up, is exactly the one you made to Yachts. And I'm glad you sort of put him on the spot on where he fits in this scenario. And I'm very glad he said what he said in response.
Good. So I don't think Cleach should go into the government. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a good idea.
In terms of him not going into the government, just let him sort of stay out and do his political homework and stuff. I'm just thinking in terms of sort of the process moving ahead, we want to keep the moderate Democrats together. The problem is going to be Tony Book and his guys. And, you know, I'm sure that's part of what Yanukovych is calculating on all of this.
I think Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's the guy, you know, what he needs is Cleach and Tony Book on the outside. He needs to be talking to them 4 times a week. I I just think Klitsch going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work.
No, I think that's right. Okay.
I can't remember if I told you this or if I only told Washington this, that when I talked to Jeff Feltman this morning, he had a new name for the UN guy, Robert Seri. Did I write you that this morning?
Yeah, I saw that.
He's now gotten both Seri and Ban Ki-moon to agree that Seri could come in Monday or Tuesday.
Okay.
So that would be great, I think, to help glue this thing and have the UN help glue it. And, fuck the EU.
No, exactly. And I think we've got to do something to make it stick together, because you can be pretty sure that if it does start to gain altitude, the Russians will be working behind the scenes to try to torpedo it.
For those of you who have never heard this conversation before, you did hear that correctly. Nuland did slam the EU by swearing at them. Also, as a reminder, there was the other recorded conversation leaked online between the Estonian Foreign Minister in 2014, Urmas Paet, and EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton, describing how snipers had been positioned on top of buildings overlooking Kiev's Maidan Square, and how they were shooting both police officers and protesters to stir up the conflict. Here is part of an RT report on that particular conversation.
Now, during this phone call, they discussed that all of those people, so many people that were killed just behind me on Independence Square, were killed on the orders not of Viktor Yanukovych's government, of the riot police that he was in charge of, but on the orders of a third party. And the Estonian foreign minister puts that third party as one of the current members of the current government that is taken over here in Kiev. We can hear a little bit of that phone call right now to see exactly what they were talking about.
All the evidence shows that people who were killed by snipers from both sides, among policemen and people from the streets, that they were the same snipers killing people from both sides.
Well, that's
It's the same handwriting, the same type of bullets, and it's really disturbing that now
So, as it looks at this time, there are elements within the U.S. government, and especially within the Republican Party itself, led by Graham and McCain, who are seeking to force Trump into some kind of conflict with Russia that he is not actively seeking to start. There is one other thing to remember about the U.S. and its relationship with Ukraine. An article on the Information Clearinghouse website shares a video of an address given by Victoria Nuland to the International Business Conference at Ukraine held in Washington, D.C. on December 13th, 2013. Here is more smoking gun evidence of U.S. interference in the governance of Ukraine.
Since Ukraine's independence in 1991, the United States has supported Ukrainians as they build democratic skills and institutions, as they promote civic participation and good governance, all of which are preconditions for Ukraine to achieve its European aspirations. We've invested over $5 billion to assist Ukraine in these and other goals that will ensure a secure and prosperous and democratic Ukraine. Today, there are senior officials in the Ukrainian government, in the business community, as well as in the opposition, civil society, and the religious community, who believe in this democratic and European future for their country. And they've been working hard to move their country and their president in the right direction. We urge the government, we urge the president to listen to these voices, to listen to the Ukrainian people, to listen to the Euromaidan, and take Ukraine forward. The support of the people in this room is absolutely essential.
In the show summary for this story, I will also include an RT report from March of 2014 that highlights other countries as well that have been selected and targeted by the U.S. for regime change. At this time, I am still standing by my position that Trump has found himself in a very difficult position, and that he is trying to put pieces into place that seem insane at the moment, but will hopefully make sense later on. We will hear about one such possible example of this coming up in the financial news. We have no idea what the bigger picture is, and why certain choices are being made, or why certain things are being said. If I was to speculate, we may later find that things that were said that appeared to be negative may have been said for a specific reason. The same thing with certain choices. When dealing with the global cabal, one will never win by oneself. Trump needs as many witnesses as possible, whether they like him or not. This will make it hard for the global cabal to do much against him directly. They will have to use other tactics. As I've stated, I am neither for nor against Trump at this time. I am choosing to observe what happens over the next 30 to 60 days to see if there is a pattern to his words and choices that may suggest he is employing a certain strategy against the cabal. For those who choose to spread negativity without fully understanding the challenges of dealing with the global cabal, I gently suggest that they go back to their day jobs and worry about creating greater happiness and joy in their world until they have gained sufficient wisdom to offer something meaningful for creating a better world. In other Trump-related news this week, Nigel Farage stood up in the European Parliament recently and took aim at the hypocrisy that exists within the EU relating to the so-called refugee crisis. Farage also offers a few points for consideration that those who are critical of Trump may not be aware. To be fair, discernment is required because Farage and Trump appear to have a very friendly relationship, and there were rumors circulating that Farage may be considered for an appointment within the Trump administration as possibly an EU ambassador. However, regardless of this, Farage makes some very relevant points, and he holds back no punches.
Thank you. Well, I can see that you're all very upset here this afternoon, and I've no doubt that the events in the USA over the last few weeks have been a very profound shock to you. Perhaps you're right. You see, what has happened here is somebody has stood on a manifesto for election, got into office, and within 1 week said that he will hold faith with his own electorate. It is called genuine democracy. Unlike the system we have in the European Union, where the unelected commissioners like Mogherini here have the sole right to propose legislation. So I'm sure that it's a great shock to you to see that a genuinely elected Democrat is doing what he was put in to do. But can we please, just for a moment, look at the facts? Amongst all the hyperbole and the hysteria, all that Donald Trump has done is taken 7 countries that were identified by President Obama as posing a risk to the USA. Obama already had put in place extreme vetting. What Trump has done is for 90 days to say, let's examine that vetting and see whether it's good enough. But I want to ask you, Mr. Verhofstadt, and all the others, with your faux outrage today, where were you when Obama in 2011 banned any Iraqi from going into the country for 6 months? Why do I hear no criticism in this chamber or from the Commission of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain and others who refuse to take a single, not one, refugee or displaced person from Syria? And how can it be that on Holocaust Day, last Friday, not a single one of you criticised the 16 countries in the world that ban Israeli Jews from even going to their country on holiday? What is this hypocrisy? So perhaps what we need to do, Mr. President, and through you to the members, perhaps what we need to do is to be a little bit more constructive. All of us here say we're Democrats. Well, here's a chance to prove it. Let us invite President Trump to come here to this European Parliament. I'm sure as Democrats you'd all agree that what we need to do is to have an open dialogue with the newly elected, most powerful man in the world. And if you throw that rejection back in my face, then you prove yourself to be the anti-democratic zealots that I always thought you were.
Parts of that address were removed, but the full speech is in the show's summary. It seems pretty clear that Farage is not afraid to make enemies, even among his colleagues in the EU. Farage refers to Trump as the most powerful man in the world, which is obviously not true at all. And what this reveals is that either Farage is truly unaware of the global power in this cabal, which I highly doubt, or he is very aware of it and playing a bit of a diplomatic game so as to not get into too much more trouble by naming the global cabal directly. For the most part, however, Farage has presented valid points in calling out the hypocrisy within the EU, and it would serve many governments around the world better to have politicians who are ready and willing to challenge the status quo and the institutional enslavement that has been forced upon the world without the informed democratic consent of the people. One positive thing that Trump has done this past week is put Bill O'Reilly in his place, while exposing him further for the agenda that O'Reilly appears to be promoting. An article on the Minds.com website from February 6th reports on the interview between the two. The article reported that, yet again, U.S. President Trump has made a public statement that sent many people into a state of shock or disbelief. This time, he called out the warmongering methods of the U.S. government in an interview with Bill O'Reilly, when O'Reilly tried to call out Trump on his support for Vladimir Putin. The article continues. After being asked why he supported the man, Trump continued, "He, referring to Putin, is the leader of his country. I say it's better to get along with Russia than not. And if Russia helps us in the fight against ISIS, which is a major fight, and the Islamic terrorism all over the world, that's a good thing." This seemed to set O'Reilly off, and he referred to Putin as a killer and asked Trump why he would support such a man. Trump immediately responded with, "There are a lot of killers. We've got a lot of killers. What, do you think our country is so innocent?" Whoop. There it is. Like him or not, Trump just publicly laid it all on the line. The article closes with the following. It was a bold statement of truth, which is to be expected from Donald Trump. Though he does seem to say things that many people disagree with, he continues to say what he thinks, which may be exactly what we need right now. In questioning the clean hand of the United States, he is calling out the drone warfare and regime change strategy that has seen the U.S. at war for nearly 2 decades. Well, indeed, it's actually been a lot longer than that. It is statements such as these that reaffirm my personal choice to neither support nor condemn Trump until his agenda becomes more clear, and to see whether or not he will be able to successfully challenge the global cabal, or whether he will be broken by them. In other geopolitical news, it appears that another Ukraine situation may be developing in Romania. At this time, I am prepared to say that I do not yet fully understand the position of the current government. I am attempting to reach out to sources who can help me to understand better if the current Romanian government is truly corrupt because of a U.S.-installed puppet, or whether the government has been moving in an anti-U.S. direction and has been targeted by U.S. cabal interests for removal due to its position. At this moment, the information seems to suggest that the current government may be acting according to U.S. interests in Romania. This is always complicated, but there are a few signs that may suggest what is going on. Here is what is known so far. On February 4th, Jack Burns, writing for the Free Thought Project, reported on the following about a growing protest in the Romanian capital of Bucharest that later spread to other cities across the country. Burns writes, "Upwards of 250,000 Romanians have taken to the streets in record-breaking numbers to protest the country's corrupt politicians. The crowds gathered in Bucharest to protest the apparent double standard the oligarchy has created for itself. No longer is it illegal to take a bribe, for example, so long as the amount does not exceed 45,000 euros or roughly $48,500. Also, the measure sets free from prison many politicians who were doing time for corruption." Romania's leftist Social Democratic Party issued the emergency decree which decriminalized cases of corruption involving less than 45,000 euros. The PSD, the Social Democratic Party, won the election of 2016, and the measure was one of the PSD's first executive orders put in place since taking over power in November. To put things into perspective, consider this headline from The Economist describing the PSD's rise to power. Conviction politics. Romania elects a party led by a vote rigger. Not only was the party's leader already a convicted election defrauder, but now reportedly wants to be the country's new leader. Burns also added that following the election, the PSD reportedly wanted then to install their leader, Liviu Dragnea, as the Prime Minister of Romania. However, the party was unable to do so because Dragnea was serving a 2-year suspended sentence for election fraud, although he denied any wrongdoing. The suspended sentence originally barred Dragnea from ever serving as the Prime Minister, but with the government's new emergency decree decriminalizing political corruption in cases involving less than 45,000 euros, it is now conceivable Dragnea will be named Prime Minister. An article on the Mail.com website on February 7th adds to this information. The standing of the left-leaning government that assumed power 2 months ago has fallen so quickly that leaders found it necessary Monday to assert they would not resign even as protests continued. The Prime Minister says a new proposal will be put before the Parliament instead. The Romanian government is looking for a way to accomplish its goal of easing corruption rules for public officials. The article continues. Laura Stefan, a Romanian anti-corruption specialist with the Expert Forum Public Policy think tank in Bucharest, said the government made a strategic blunder with the emergency decree. It would have tolerated abuse of power by officials, ranging from a mayor in a small village to a top government minister, as long as the amount of the graft involved was less than 45,000 euros. It's simply undefendable, Stefan said. How can you explain to the people of this country, who maybe don't make $50,000 in their lifetime, that it is okay for public officials to misuse their office in order to obtain less than $50,000 from the state budget? Public officials have not offered a specific explanation for why the law is needed, although one minister said it would bring the country in line with other European nations. The key sentence there would be, the law would bring the country in line with other European nations. This would suggest that corruption is widespread across the European Union, much as Nigel Farage hinted at in the previous story. In a separate article on the same day from Mail.com, the following was reported. In an address to Parliament, President Klaus Iohannis, a critic of the 2-month-old government, said the majority of Romanians now believed the country was going in the wrong direction. Romania needs a government that is transparent, which governs predictably by the light of day, not sneakily at night, the president said, referring to the late hour the government passed the emergency ordinance last week aimed at decriminalizing some forms of official corruption. RomaniaInsider.com reported on February 5th that the leader of Romania's Social Democratic Party, Liviu Dragnea, probably the only man who managed to have his name booed by 600,000 people in the streets of Romania in the last 25 years, claims that the protests that have been taking place in Bucharest and all over the country in the last 6 days have been professionally organized. He also pointed the finger at multinationals for supporting the demonstrations against the government that his party named less than a month ago. This is one of those confusing statements because from one perspective, he is very likely telling the truth. The question is, from which perspective is he talking? The multinationals he is seeking to play ball with, or the foreign interests that may be seeking to expose the corruption? Will Russia be blamed for this, for example? If so, then you can be sure that the U.S. is pulling the strings in Romania. Where things start to get suspicious is if we look to at least one American global institution that has an operation in Romania. AmCham.com, which is the American Chamber of Commerce, has taken a public position on the protests against the government. In one article from Romania Insider on February 9th, the following was reported. AmCham Romania, in a public statement, rejected the recent claims that multinationals in Romania supported the protests in response to the impact of the recent tax and legislative changes and called them untrue and non-constructive for the economy and society. It is unhealthy for the Romanian society to disseminate such untrue statements. Romanian citizens working in both multinational and local companies have voluntarily expressed their point of view in public without any interference by their employer, a statement from AmCham reads. In another article from February 7th on the amcham.ro website, the organization reported that it is detrimental for Romania's medium and long-term development to reach budgetary targets by way of cutting investments or changing the fiscal policies that directly and immediately affect the business community, the main contributor to the state budget. Given the importance of the budgetary framework for the business environment, AmCham Romania emphasizes the need for a quote-unquote genuine and open consultation process with all relevant stakeholders, as should be the case for all public policies impacting the business community. Perhaps strange words coming from an organization that appears to be connected to supporting low-level corruption in the country of Romania. More details will follow as the nature of the protest becomes more fully understood, but as it seems right now, another U.S.-supported puppet government acting in accordance to rules from the EU allowing low-level corruption among public officials is getting exposed, and the voices of the people of Romania are ready to say to the world that they have had enough of this. In financial news, as I have stated before on this newscast, we are in uncharted waters at this time, at least during this current physical lifetime. It could be argued that humans in the past have gone through very similar situations because history is not what it has been taught to the people of the world. This has become more than abundantly clear on so many different levels. A financial transition of some kind is very clearly in the near future for those with the foresight to see it. It is going to impact the world in ways that we may not even fully understand yet because we do not have access to the full big picture, nor do we have access to the complete bigger picture of why all is happening as well. Bix Weir, who is considered to be an expert on gold, silver, and Bitcoin, appeared recently with Greg Hunter on USAWatchdog.com, and he shared some insights about what he is currently seeing. I have stated that people are too quick to assume that Trump is bad without understanding what is really going on behind the scenes. A few weeks ago, I commented on the strategy that Trump was intentionally appointing people that many consider bad, and are jumping to the conclusion that Trump is therefore bad. Willie hints in this interview that Trump may have appointed certain people because there is an intentional plan to crash the system and rebuild. Certain people are going to have to take the fall, so Trump has positioned certain people into certain positions, setting them up as pawns to be removed when the crash or reset finally comes. This does not necessarily make Trump good, but it starts to put some things into perspective when people understand everything that Trump is up against and why Obama was not able to succeed where Trump may just now be able to succeed. Willie explains why in this interview. The conversation started out with some political talk about Trump and the possible secession of California from the United States. Weir comments that California will not secede from the U.S. for the same reason that the breakup of Europe is trying to be prevented. It would collapse the derivatives markets worldwide. The conversation starts from this point.
Aren't we going to get a breakup of the EU anyway? I mean, we already have a Brexit. We already have Marine Le Pen in France leading. Merkel is in deep trouble. I mean, the whole European scam is a scam, and it's in deep trouble. I mean, if that goes under, I mean, isn't this the year we get the derivatives implosion?
Oh, definitely. I mean, just look at Greece. People keep saying, well, you know, if Greece leaves the EU, it's not going to affect the rest of Europe. Yes, it will. It will destroy all the debt based on Greek bonds. It will destroy all the banks. Deutsche Bank, great example. Deutsche Bank goes, JP Morgan goes, Citibank goes, all the banks go. And then the derivative implosion happens. And that's always been kind of the home-built nuclear bomb in the financial system, is the derivative market, the hundreds of trillions, quadrillions in derivatives that are so dependent upon third parties staying in business. They are the counterparty to Deutsche Bank and Citibank and JP Morgan. You know, once one large derivative holder goes, they all go. And we almost saw it in 2008. I think we're real close to it again. I think Trump is going to push that ticket. I'm not happy with Trump's Treasury Secretary pick on one hand, because he is the king of market rigging at Goldman Sachs. He heads the IT department at Goldman Sachs. Mnuchin, yeah. His father was a Goldman Sachs lifer who was on the board of directors of Goldman Sachs. Just the heart of the evil part of the banking cabal. Mnuchin is just an evil human being, and I think Trump did it for a reason, being that he's going to have to fire someone, or someone is not going to make it through the congressional gauntlet. So hopefully Mnuchin's going to be the sacrificial lamb, get him out of there and get someone who's not going to rig the markets going forward. Because if Mnuchin gets in, that's the first thing he's going to do, is continue the market rigging.
Do you think that we're close to this derivatives implosion right now? Do you think it's this year?
I do think it's this year. I think it could happen at any moment. Trump has long said that we're in some huge bubbles and they got to pop. He doesn't want them popping after he's fixed half the things in America. So I would assume he's going to pop them very soon in the first few months of his administration. And we're into that now. There are certain people I know that he needs to get in place, because the popping of this bubble is the big mother of all bubbles.
Oh, so wait, let me get it. So he is rushing to get his people in place so he can execute his plan. You're saying he has a grand plan, and things aren't just going to happen willy-nilly. You're saying that he's going to get his people in place, and he's going to force the collapse, the reorganization.
Yes, but it's not his grand plan. This is the plan of the good guys that I've been talking about, going back to Alan Greenspan in the early 70s, when he wrote the original computer programs to make this financial system a reality.
That's Root A. That's Root A. That's the program. Go ahead.
Root A is the basis of the computer monetary system. It was invented in the 1960s by John Kemeny and Alan Greenspan. Alan Greenspan brought it to the Fed, was rigging markets for the U.S. government in the 70s, 80s, all based on this economic formula called On the Road to the Golden Age from the 1960s. That said, if you're going to return to a gold-backed system, first thing you do is run the unbacked fiat system as long as possible, soaking up all the benefits, and then crash the system when the pain and suffering doesn't match your benefits. And that's kind of where we are with the United States. As all the power goes east, the economic power, we need to get out of this system and move on to something else. All you have to do to crash the system is to stop rigging the gold and silver markets, which is a daily basis. They rig all markets, all the currency markets, all the stock market, the gold and silver markets, the oil market. The petrodollar is going away, and that was all done with computer programs and rigging. So it's not like we're defaulting on anything. The dollar has never been backed by anything, other than the full faith and credit, at least since 1971. It wasn't backed by oil. The petrodollar was a scam invented by Kissinger in the 70s to get Saudi Arabia and all the countries to only purchase oil in U.S. dollars. And what that did was create an artificial demand for the dollar, because every country had to hold U.S. dollars to buy oil, and everybody needed oil. And then the Saudis would recycle that money through our stock market, getting our large corporations rich, and that's how they invented the petrodollar. But that's breaking down too. And the interesting thing is, in the Road to Ruta comics that I look at from the Federal Reserve, that's what they talk about. They call them black tears. The oil is black tears that back the gold system that the Federal Reserve talks about. And this is all done behind the scenes. Yeah, we can see all the fighting between the Democrats and the liberal and the left and the Republicans, the left and the right. It's all just to show there's so much deeper things going on behind the scenes where the real battles are going on, taking out the Rothschilds and George Soros and the Clintons. Trump could end this battle between the Democrats and the Republicans, the left and the right, tomorrow if he actually revealed what was really going on with the Democratic Party and why they wanted to open the borders and why they wanted to give up our sovereignty. I mean, it is a huge secret plan, and all you got to do is go through Hillary Clinton's, 750,000 emails, and you're going to find all kinds of dirt on the Clinton Global Initiative and all the
global charity
things.
fraud.
Well, exactly.
But
They can't get any kickbacks from the Clintons anymore because they're no longer in charge of the government.
So why do you think we're close to a economic reset, an implosion, a derivatives problem?
Well, I know that Donald Trump is in charge of the Exchange Stabilization Fund. So it's basically he has the keys to ending this market rigging game. And once you end the market rigging game, then you can't support the stock market, and everything has to go to its true fair market value with real trades, no more derivatives. So Trump can do it. The question is, does he want to? And it's not just Trump. It's the people who are behind Trump. I call them the good guys.
The
Trump's
Pentagon.
Well, there's people at the Pentagon, in the military, patriots, going back since the 60s. A lot of these guys are looking for a little retribution on the bad guys taking out Kennedy. But all this goes back to, what does Trump want to do? Trump and his people. Do they want to fix things, go down that road of starting to fix things with the bubble still there, with the Fed still printing money, or does he really want to fix them, which means you crash the system first and then you rebuild? I think it's the latter. I think he's trying to get people in place, and then he will crash the system and rebuild.
What happens to silver and gold when the system resets?
Well, they'll have to be traded freely. There will no longer be hundreds of billions of ounces of electronic silver trading back and forth to set the price. Now, silver has been controlled and rigged and price suppressed since the 1850s, since the Opium Wars. That's how far back it goes. And ever since then, it's been under control by these banksters, as I call them, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers. It's all part of the monetary system. Since the 30s and 40s, when electronics and different types of communication, like what we're talking about right now, all this stuff needs silver. And all that silver has been used up. About 40 billion of the 50 billion ounces have been used, and since the 1950s. And right now, we're looking at maybe 2 to 3 billion ounces of silver that can come into the market, and that's just not enough. I don't think there's enough silver even to use in the monetary system going forward. I think silver is going to be too valuable to use as money. Gold, I do think, will be part of the new monetary system. Silver will be much too valuable because we need it. We need it for new technologies. We need it for the current technologies, and we're running out.
So if gold goes to 10,000 an ounce, silver's going to go right along for the ride at 10,000 an ounce. That's what you're telling me?
Yeah, if it's freely traded. That's the key also. The funny thing is, you look at Deutsche Bank admits that they were rigging the silver market, and they turned in a bunch of other banks that were rigging with them, and the CFTC has done nothing about it. They did 3 investigations into silver manipulation. Here we have a confession in court that they rigged the silver market, and the CFTC still hasn't said a word about it. Amazing.
Do you think that things will be tough when this reset happens? What happens to people? How do you prepare, and what happens to people who don't?
Well, hopefully, the United States has been planning on this for a long, long time. We've known there's been a problem. Greenspan wrote about it in the early days in the 60s and 70s through the Road to Ruta comics and the information that came out of the Fed Boston. We know this is going to happen. Catherine Austin Fitts always says, who's going to be the one to press that red button and make it happen? And that's kind of the key. So I think the United States has a plan. It involves going back to a gold standard. I think it involves Bitcoin as well. That's why you're not seeing laws outlawing Bitcoin. I think the United States will return to some form of gold standard with a Bitcoin component. The Fed will be gone, dust, toast, when the crash happens, Mnuchin will be gone, Stanley Fischer will be gone, Yellen will be gone, and the Fed will be folded up into the U.S. Treasury.
What happens to all that debt that the Fed has? What about our Treasury bonds? What happens?
Nothing. They disappeared. These are credit. Debt is a credit. It's an electronic blip, truthfully, that says one person owes another person X amount of these electronic credits. When the derivative bubble goes, the banks go. And if the banks go, that's where everybody keeps their money. Even the governments keep their money in banks. So, yeah, it's gone. All the debt is gone, which is a great thing. Electronic assets are gone as well, though. So there's going to be a need to reissue money, to reallocate money.
So you think, and just so people understand this, you think that we're on the precipice of this, what would you call it? Is it a reset? Is it a crash? What would you call this? And are we on the precipice of this?
Yeah, we are. The question is, Trump was put there to make it a smooth transition. Whether a smooth transition is possible, I don't think so. What I would call it is a creative destruction event. And a creative destruction event is a purposeful destruction of a system that is no longer viable. And then the creative part of it is that you get to start fresh. All the debt will be gone. That's the problem with the world today, our financial system. Every country, every city, every state, every individual is in so much debt. And that debt was created from thin air by these band of criminal bankers. It's a good thing it's going away. The problem's going to be people who believed in the system have electronic assets as well. And you can't get rid of the bad guys because they have most of the electronic assets without getting rid of all of them. Trump, he was in charge on January 20th at 12 o'clock. He was in charge of the Exchange Stabilization Fund, and they're still rigging the gold, silver markets. They're still rigging the stock market. Now, I do think the plan is to slowly let the rig go, but at some point you're going to have to crash it. You're going to have to let reality sink in and then go back to physical markets for gold and silver, where someone has cash, walks into an exchange and exchanges it for physical silver. We don't have that in the world right now, and it's a big problem. Right now we have electronic derivatives deciding the price of everything, from stocks to bonds to the gold market. I do think Trump will let it go. I think he's trying to get people in place, in the right places.
And the Democrats are blocking him. Are they blocking him to slow him down? Are they blocking him because
life and death for the Democratic Party, which I think both the Democrats and Republicans will be exposed for what they are, which is both criminal organizations, and they're trying to block it because that's all they got left. They have nothing left that they can do. He's reversing all of Obama's presidential decrees, and they don't like it. You know, and like I said, we're in a socialistic. For the last 8 years, it's been very socialistic. When you give somebody something and then you take it away, that's when they get really pissed off. If they weren't given all these free things by Obama
and rights like voting,
oh yeah, and open borders and all that Obama gave over the last 8 years, then there wouldn't be a gigantic problem right now. It would be a more smooth transaction. But they were. And now Trump is threatening, or they think he's threatening, to take away their rights.
Well, he is going to take it away. But they're not rights.
But were they rights? Exactly. So, is it the right of I saw the Women's March, and they were saying, Obama's taking away my rights to birth control. And Obama's not taking away your rights to birth control. Trump, sorry.
Yeah.
I keep getting them mixed up. That tells you something. What he's doing is making it so that the government's not letting you get it for free. All he's saying, you have the right to pick whatever you want. You just can't get it for free. And that's this big issue that this woman had. And I'm like, where in the Constitution does it say that the federal government is required and is one of your rights to get free contraception or free anything? And see, that's the problem. And when in a socialist society, which we have been leaning towards, when you start taking things away, that's when the people start uprising. And yeah, when the banks go, that'll be the big kicker, because even the people with no money will lose everything, and they're going to look to blame anybody and everybody. I see the rise of Bernie Sanders when that happens.
Do we have basically a good guy? This is basically a fight of good versus evil. And the evil is the old system, the rigged system. Am I getting this right? And the good is the new, and I hate to say, Donald Trump, but, he doesn't need a job that pays $400,000 a year. And so, is this really a classic fight of good and evil? Is that what this is?
Oh, it is, and it is. I believe it has been won in the background. This is the taking down of the Illuminati.
You think it's been won in the back? Why do you say that? Why do you say that this battle between good and evil has been won? Just because of the election of Donald Trump?
Well, that's one of the things. The Brexit is another thing. These things weren't allowed to happen when the bad guys were in control. George Soros owns the company that makes the voting machines. If the bad guys were still in charge, Trump would not have won. Not a chance in the world. But they aren't in charge anymore. And I was telling people Trump's going to win because he can rig the market, rig the voting machines now because his people, the good guys, are in charge of that side of it now. That's why Clinton lost. She didn't have enough rigging power. And I'm not saying that Trump would have lost the election. Clinton was a absolute criminal, but they had a good rigging mechanism going for a long, long time, both computer rigging and actual getting people to vote 5 or 6 times, busing them from place to place. But it was all rigged, and it always has been rigged since the invention of electronic computers that pose as voting machines. All you have to do is have the key to the mainframe that tabulates all the votes, which the bad guys have had since the early 70s, and now the good guys have it. The bad guys were taken out, and that's why you're seeing all this change and all this uproar. And Trump can end the violence in the streets with an easy thing. Just release the information he has about the Clintons, about the Republicans, and about the Democrats and how criminal they are, and the Bushes. All it takes is telling the truth, and the United States can return to a peaceful type of place. If you don't tell the truth, you're going to get fights in the streets from people who have no idea why they're fighting. They just don't like. They seem to think they don't like what Trump stands for, but they don't know what's going on behind the scenes. They don't know that their lives have been stolen from them, and our country was stolen before the 60s, but really, truly, they took power after they took out Kennedy. This has now changed, and it really is a coup. It was a peaceful and silent coup, but it was a coup, and now is the time that Trump needs to tell the people what really happened to them.
Weir's website is roadtoruta, ROOTA.com, and the link can be found in the show summary. What may also be of interest to those who are actively following the potential financial paradigm shift are statements made by Trump recently at a press conference with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. When asked by a Chinese reporter about a phone conversation with Chinese President Xi Jinping, the following statements were made by Trump.
As far as the currency devaluations, I've been complaining about that for a long time, and I believe that we will all eventually, and probably very much sooner than a lot of people understand or think, we will be all at a level playing field, because that's the only way it's fair. That's the only way that you can fairly compete in trade and other things. We will be on that field, and we will all be working very hard to do great for our country. But it has to be fair, and we will make it fair.
What this may mean exactly remains to be seen, but the fact that Trump has been complaining about currency devaluations and the fact that he has suggested that something will happen much sooner than people understand or think points to a possibility that certain financial changes that many are expecting and waiting for may finally happen. If the information shared by Weir in the previous story is correct, then it would make sense that many holders of U.S. Treasury debt bonds would be seeking to sell them, and this is exactly what has been happening according to reports. An article on the Russia Insider website by Matthew Allen on February 9th has reported that it's no secret that Russia and China both share a growing appetite for gold. But how excited are they about U.S. Treasuries, the most boring but safe investment, which basically translates into, we believe that everything will basically stay the same. From the looks of it, Moscow and Beijing no longer think T-bonds are a safe bet or in their national interests. Allen refers to a Bloomberg article by Zhou Zhang in China. Zhou writes that as they sharply increase their gold reserves, China and Russia are selling off their U.S. treasuries, with their hunger for the metal coming amid a strict diet excluding dollars. Gold is appealing to these countries because it shields them from the U.S. government's ability to control the value of their holdings. Gold is a country-less currency. A continuing trend of reserve buildup and treasury sales might weaken the dollar and pressure gold prices higher. China and Russia have officially added almost 50 million ounces of gold to their central banks while selling off more than $267 billion of treasuries. It would seem that both Russia and China are preparing for some kind of financial event, and it could very likely be the event that Weir described moments ago. Allen also added the following to his article, writing that Moscow realizes that despite the risks, a policy of gradual de-dollarization is crucial in order to shield itself from Western economic warfare. China, of course, is in the same boat. These countries aren't just dumping the dollar, they're also positioning their own currencies for trade throughout Eurasia. And the fact that growing demand for gold could lead to a weakened dollar is definitely an extra fuck you to Washington. Late in the day on February 10th, RT is now reporting that Germany appears to be realizing that something may be about to happen. According to RT, Berlin is bringing home its gold reserves stored in New York, London, and Paris faster than scheduled, Germany's central bank said on Thursday. The move is linked to surging Euroscepticism as new governments in France and Italy may ditch the single currency. As French presidential candidate Marine Le Pen and Italy's Five-Star Movement are openly calling to pull out of the euro, some economists in Germany say the repatriated gold may be needed to back a new Deutschmark should the eurozone collapse. Reading between the lines, it is being said very clearly there that Germany is actively preparing for the introduction of a gold-backed currency. And this points to what Weir has said about the movement to a new financial paradigm of gold-backed currencies. Let me try to explain this more simply to those not fully understanding what is happening here, and I hope that I'm in the ballpark. There are at least two parts to the U.S. Treasury, the Treasury itself and a formerly secretive part called the Exchange Stabilization Fund. Weir mentioned moments ago that Trump has control of this stabilization fund. CVN gave a series of reports recently on the history of this formerly secretive institution. The main function of this fund is to protect U.S. interests while the U.S. Fed Reserve steals from the rest of the world, protected by a military-industrial complex, a criminally fraudulent legal judicial system, and a criminally fraudulent system of fractional reserve banking. For decades, the U.S. has been able to manipulate the world by controlling them financially. They go into countries, destabilize them, get them into debt or into the debt-based system, and then they can be controlled. To preserve their economies, certain countries have been forced to buy up U.S. debt. This was done even though the U.S. has had more than enough money stashed away in this exchange stabilization fund to pay for those debt bonds. The trick was to sell debt bonds to keep countries in alignment with the U.S. hegemony agenda. However, when a country sells a U.S. debt bond, the Exchange Stabilization Fund is the institution that pays off that bond. How this is balanced off in the bookkeeping, I'm not quite sure yet. Russia and China and the rest of the world have grown tired of these games. They have built their own financial model and they are creating their own economic reality that involves the creation of the new Silk Road. This is a pan-Eurasian economic and trading network that will be supported by countries choosing to align more with the growing influence of the Eurasian-aligned countries. Now that Russia and China have most of the pieces in place, they can begin selling off their U.S. debts because they are sufficiently protected from any punishments the U.S. may try to deal upon them. As the U.S. debt bonds are sold, Russia and China receive U.S. dollars. These countries immediately turn around and use the increasingly worthless US dollars, to buy physical gold and put into their reserves. This gives both countries a massive store of metal with real value instead of the imaginary value that will only disappear when the US dollar is finally put to sleep. By uniting together and creating this new model, the old model is being declared redundant. The banking cabal that has stolen billions, if not trillions of dollars from the world is being shut out from their profit-taking schemes, such as the foreign exchange markets and many more. All of this is going to be significant in the coming near future as more is revealed and as the shift to this new system unfolds. In general news, for the benefit of those who wish to hear some of the more esoteric news of shifts and changes taking place beyond the purely third-dimensional realm, I would like to offer something for them. This news is not for everyone, but I do invite listeners to give it a try. Some of it may resonate with you and some of it may not. Regardless, however, the changes our planet is going through at this time is connected to events and to energies beyond the current understanding of much of humanity. This will shift in time. We've heard in the first part of this broadcast some insights leading to revelations connected to the bigger picture, the exposing of lies, frauds, and crimes that have been committed against humanity and the planet. Connecting to the bigger picture, however, is a bit more of a stretch for people. The attempts to understand why these things are happening now and why there is this shift in human and planetary consciousness and what it will mean for their immediate future, but also for the future of humanity and our planet. It's clear that humans were never meant to be slaves to the criminally fraudulent systems of banking and commercial law. The human journey has been to understand, to some degree, what our true purpose is for existing on this planet at this time in physical form. One article describes the shift as being an unraveling or tearing down of the old 3D matrix as a new higher vibrational earth and consciousness is being born. This is a very complicated article to read and listen to, so I'm choosing to put it in the show summary so those who truly understand our shifting reality can access it. The important thing to note, however, is that our reality, as we currently know and experience it, is rapidly changing and evolving, and it is affecting people in different ways depending upon their current vibration and worldview. With the new energies that are coming to the Earth, including the very recent energies, our bodies are being affected at the cellular and molecular levels. An article on the Love Has Won blog site shared on February 6th that you have entered the great gateway and portal of the third wave, and this boost of energy will be ongoing for the next few weeks for your spiritual, emotional, and physical bodies. Your physical, emotional, and etheric DNA is currently being upgraded to the 7th dimensional frequencies. Your 12 strands of DNA are awakening, which include your physical DNA, etheric DNA, and emotional DNA strands. Your physical DNA is experiencing now a higher amount of resilience and self-repair attributes within the cells of your body. This activation will increase over the next weeks. Your emotional DNA is now being activated to hold a higher capacity of love, which is the all-transmuting energy to dissolve any old beliefs that do not serve you any longer. These beliefs are being replaced by collaboration, upliftment, deep love, appreciation, and the contribution to the highest good of all that is. Your etheric DNA is now being activated to a stronger connection and interaction with what you call the unseen world. The unseen world includes all realities, past, present, future, and parallel. Your galactic families of light, the angels, the ascended masters, the elementals, the animal consciousness, the Agartha Inner Earth Network, the crystal consciousness, the plant consciousness, and your higher self. From now on, trust and know what you see, feel, perceive, and experience from these realms to assist you on your path. The doors are now wide open to take great strides to step into the new earth. As our bodies adapt, new experiences will be had by those who are able to more fully integrate these new energies and not resist them. There has long been talk among some sources of a reuniting of twin flames. The twin flame, according to sources, is supposed to be the other opposite sex part of your soul, this other part of you. Historically, in physical form, there was the separate male and female entities. As we evolve beyond a purely physical form, we may reintegrate or reconnect with the other half of our soul and become a complete divine feminine, divine masculine entity. In three-dimensional physical form, we live in separation from a divine creator source, in separation from each other, and even in separation from ourselves. As we move into a higher energetic existence, we are witnessing the fading away of separation towards an awareness of the oneness of all things. Kate Rose shares the following about twin flames and the coming period of time. She writes, "We are each on a unique journey with our flame, and we're not all meant to join with our love during this lifetime. Yet, we are seeing more and more flames moving on similar paths toward reunion. It was important for us to have taken this journey together. We needed to experience all the stages of this type of love because that is the only way to learn about ourselves and our place in this world. Only our flame can elevate us in such a way that we come to see our divine purpose in this life. The biggest lesson we've been trying to teach one another is this. In order to reunite, that connection can't be the main focus of the relationship. If we have done our deep soul work, then this month offers all the magic of finally bringing those twin flames together who are meant to join at this moment in time. We are meant to be at different levels because we're supposed to help one another. If we all arrived at the destination at the same time, there wouldn't be any teachers to lead the way for others. That's what this first large wave of flames have been doing, traversing this path and learning about this connection so that we might pass down our lessons to future flames. We have been urged to make more mistakes than successes so that we might lead the movement toward higher love. This past few years have been difficult for flames. We had to watch our old lives being blown to smithereens. While they may have been comfortable, we weren't fulfilling our divine purpose on this earth. The thing about our flames is, even if we're separated by physical space, our spirits are always connected. The fastest way to our flame is in fact through ourself. If we run or deny our inner light, then by extension, we also push our flame away. The only way to be ready for reunion is also to connect with our core self as deeply as we can, to no longer hide who we are, and be ready to embrace all of our beautiful chaos. If we have done this during the past year, then our flame has also felt that, and will have been on a similar journey inspired by ours. We won't ever join together if both flames don't acknowledge this process of connection and love. One of the most difficult aspects of twin flame love is acknowledging it and allowing ourselves to discover who that soul might be in this lifetime. In order to do that, we need to be able to talk about this esoteric concept and discuss with others if we both, in fact, think we are each other's flame. So, it might seem that one part of the human journey is to find completion within oneself, and this may or may not include a reuniting with one's twin flame on the physical plane of Earth. However, the journey is aided by being aware of the synchronicities that one experiences when one is open to seeing them. An article on the woowoomedia.com website addresses this. In an article on February 6th, it is written that everything in our life is linked. From the past to the present and future, every single coincidence or accident we stumble upon is linked. No matter how small or big of a movement is, it is all about synchronicity. Whether you feel like you are having a perfect day and everything goes smoothly, or experience a bad period in which a lot of coincidences happen, the universe is sending you a message. People and things happening in an exact moment is nothing but synchronicity. And, fortunately, there is a way to accept it. Do you know the saying, when the student is ready, the master appears? That is exactly how synchronicity is explained. Whenever you are synchronized with something you truly want, you are more likely to meet that thing, which is why similar people meet, quote unquote, accidentally. The thing is, they are tuned in to the exact same frequency, and synchronicity does its best to match them. It might help for some people to think of it this way. You are able to speak with your friend on a mobile phone because you know the number or the frequency of that person. You are able to find or be in tune when you know this number. It is also said in English that when two or more people agree on something, they are said to be in sync or on the same wavelength. Synchronicity aligns people of a certain frequency or wavelength to connect with who or what they may need to move forward. The article continues. Synchronicity works best for people who believe it to be true. So, for starters, you should believe in it and stop saying that every event is an accident or a coincidence. The thing is, if you are saying this, you are sending a weak spiritual signal to the universe, as opposed to the strong signal that the universe sends you by syncing everything around you. By understanding synchronicity and seeing things not as an ordinary, but as a committed person, you are able to connect more deeply with your inner sync. And actually, you don't have to work as hard to make the things you want happen. Instead, you will just believe in them and let them happen without any force whatsoever. This awakening may be recognized by certain symptoms that one may be feeling physically. An article on the In5D website on February 6th shares 25 symptoms that people may be feeling that point to a shift happening inside. Some of these changes include headaches, hearing strange sounds, increased sensitivity and awareness of everything around, stronger senses, especially the sense of smell, a feeling of being out of focus, like being in a movie, a loss of coordination and balance, strange, unfamiliar sensations in the body, sudden waves of chills or goosebumps, a loss of the sense of time, weird sleep patterns and a strong need for extra sleep, and also experiencing an increase in the synchronicities in one's world are a few of these symptoms. In the midst of these changes, it is important to remember this, and I have to make sure I pay attention to this for myself. Brenda Hoffman, in an article on the Love Has Won website, reminds us of the following. The 3D world of anger, hate, and rage draw you in day after day because you are not noticing positive changes in your world. Instead, you are sensing more negative actions, in your terms, than ever in this lifetime. All seems hopeless, creating a helpless feeling within you because of the fear and anger now seemingly rampant in the world. You have read and studied what is happening, that the rage and anger are clearing the last vestiges of outer directed power. Even though you want to believe that such is true, your vision, your current world, does not indicate that. Hoffman continues, just as you cannot tell others how to live their life, you cannot force yourself to do so. Many of you are starting to believe that you should be a different, more loving, more forgiving, and more five-dimensional perfect being. By should-ing yourself, using the word should, you force yourself into something that is not quite you, like trying to force your feet into shoes that are a size too small. Your only role now is to follow your heart, your inner being, wherever that leads you. Perhaps you need to address pieces that surprise you, Perhaps you find yourself disliking a group of people, and that astounds you. Perhaps you do not wish to be with anyone now. So be it. You cannot be someone you are not. Allow yourself to evolve at the pace that is correct for you. Trust yourself enough to know that when something is too unpleasant, too painful, too heavy, or just not right for you, your internal being will shift your direction. Allow yourself to be in all your facets, and you will quickly adjust to a 5-dimensional. Curtail your various facets, and you will continue to function in a 3rd-dimensional manner. So as we listen to our hearts, we can begin to expand in our consciousness, and we recognize certain symptoms that show us we are changing. As we pay closer attention to the synchronicities, we will be guided to the people and things that can move us forward. We are experiencing this at this time because of all the energies that are shifting and evolving our physical bodies. This is what we are evolving towards, and I am the first to admit that I still have some work to do on this one, following my heart and the synchronicities. We are all moving there, together, in our uniquely different, equally beautiful ways and time frames. Over to science and tech-related news now. In keeping with the theme we discussed a few minutes earlier about following one's heart or listening to one's heart, it may surprise some people to learn that there is a science to the intelligence of our hearts, and there are ways to begin learning how to listen to one's heart. An article appearing on the openheartedrebel.com website on February 6th shares the following. Our hearts wake us up in some ways that we prefer not to experience, but if we work on listening to it, instead of waiting to be woken up through some uncomfortable experience, then, well, we can save a lot of time and pain. Here's the science behind our heart's intelligence for the rational part of our brain that is afraid to trust the unknown, and a few guidelines to begin practicing, because, like any muscle that you want to build, it takes some discipline and effort. The article explains that the heart is an organ of enormous electromagnetic intelligence. 60 to 65% of the heart is composed of neuron cells, not muscle cells, and like the brain, generates a very powerful electromagnetic field that permeates every cell in the body, but is about 60 times greater in amplitude than the brain. An electromagnetic field is essentially a broadcasting device. So to rephrase that last sentence, the heart's ability to broadcast messages is 60 times greater in amplitude than the brain. The heart is also the first organ to function after conception, whereas the brain begins to start operating after 90 days. So, our heart, as you can see, is a very powerful messenger. It speaks a language similar to the brain, but uses a more sophisticated inner guidance system based on both feeling and thinking. The brain, with its hallmark attribute of overthinking, tends to want to control and play things safe. In the case of our brain, this is why we get messages that are not always in our best interest. The brain says, follow the map you were given. It's a sure bet. The heart says, take this route. You don't know it yet, but it will lead you to a new and more fulfilling life. Some may start to question the importance of the brain if it is our heart that is so strong. The brain has a function of bringing order and perhaps clarity when our emotions threaten to sweep us away, and it is the brain that gives us the tools to exist in the world in a safe manner. The article continues. Unfortunately, though, it's an overused one, and this is why we often feel exhausted. Our brains are on overdrive, trying to do all of our problem solving. Our heart, always present, always ready for our arrival, even if difficult to locate at times, is where the fuel lies and where our whole body, brain included, can take a break to recharge and get some wise direction on how to navigate the path ahead. How might one begin to learn the difference between the signal of the brain and the signals of the heart? The article writes that when your heart is speaking, you feel it all over your body. Heart messages feel open and expansive. They jolt you. They make your blood flow and your body pulse. Your vision gets clear, your sensory perceptions heighten and become more acute. The answers that come to you feel ready-made, channeled, and handed down from a higher place of knowing, not dissected or chewed up. In other words, it's a full-body experience. When a message is coming strictly from your head, that's pretty much the only place you will feel it. Irrational and overanalyzed brain messages, usually coming from fear-based belief systems, and tend to feel constricting. When the brain takes over, we feel obsessive. Our muscles tense. Our breath shortens. We get anxious. We feel tired. We feel disconnected. There's a general feeling that something is off. How might one begin to fine-tune one's ability to listen? The article offers the following. Talk to yourself. To test this theory out, tell yourself something you know to be absolutely true about yourself and see where you feel this in your body. After you do that, tell yourself something you know to be absolutely false and see where you feel this in your body. You can also practice this with a decision you made that you knew was right for you and a decision you knew that wasn't right. Once you get a sense of this, you can start asking yourself all kinds of questions. As you do this over and over, you begin to become fine-tuned to your body's inner guidance system based on the signals it gives to you. Another way is to keep a journal, and this involves a practice of writing down a question and then asking your head to answer the question, and then your heart to answer the question, and noting the different sensations in your body. The third way is to focus on breathing. According to the article, there has been a lot of research showing that one important way the heart speaks and influences the brain is when the heart is coherent, meaning it is generating a stable pattern in its rhythm. When this is so, the body and brain begin to experience many benefits, some of which are greater mental clarity and intuitive ability. An exercise for helping your heart become more coherent is to focus on your breathing. Take at least a minute or two to do this. First, ask your mind and heart to join forces. You can imagine a gold channel of light connecting the two and feeling the flow of energy between them. Then take deep breaths, holding your inhale for 4 counts and breathing out for 4 counts. Do this 10 times. At this time, you may choose to practice either talking to yourself or writing your question in your journal. For those who have done rapid breath meditations, they will know and understand the power of breath work and the impact it can have in one's spiritual awakening. In the show summary for this story, I will add a link to a scientific study done relating to breathing and how one's breathing can impact one's memory and one's perception of fear. No wonder the global cabal has been so desperate to keep people sick, in debt, and in fear. Keeping people from connecting to the power of their heart energy and then having them unite with other energies worldwide would have been fatal to them. Indeed, perhaps this is why the global cabal is now being exposed worldwide. Enough people have begun making conscious efforts to create a heart space for global change and are now empowered to create that new world that so many are now claiming to want to be in. Finally, in health-related news, amazing, is it not, to see all the information that is now coming out about the truth of the healing potential of cannabis. On last week's newscast, I offered a number of links to relatively new information that is showing how cannabis can help many different conditions in the human body, but it can also help animals as well that feed on hemp. We have heard how cannabis has potential benefits for not only cancer, but Parkinson's disease and other neurodegenerative conditions, herpes in all its forms, Lyme disease, and arguably so much more. This week, we can continue with several other related stories. An article appearing on the CannabisConnections.tk website on February 5th shares the following. It was discovered during a recent survey that cannabis was the most effective treatment against fibromyalgia, with an efficiency exceeding all existing medications. Fibromyalgia is a disorder that is accompanied by chronic fatigue, deep muscle pain, headaches, and depression. The article added that although patients with this disorder have a choice of 3 drugs, cannabis has proven to exceed that of all drugs synthesized in the laboratory. In a recent online survey conducted by the National Pain Foundation, more than 1,300 patients with fibromyalgia were interviewed. The result is that cannabis has been designated as the most effective in treating the symptoms. Of course, the news only gets better and better as far as cancer is concerned. The Anon HQ website reported on February 5th that cannabis has been making a lot of noise lately. In November of 2016, Australia became the first entire continent to legalize cannabis. The first country to fully legalize cannabis was Uruguay. In January of 2017, Germany legalized medical cannabis, allowing patients with exceptional cases to get a cannabis prescription from their doctor, as well as a refund for the upfront cost of cannabis from their health insurance. This spring, Canada is set to legalize the personal use of cannabis. In recent years, support for cannabis legalization in the United States has reached a tipping point. According to surveys from Gallup, support for legalization has risen from 31% in 2000 to 60% in 2016. 28 states and Washington, D.C. allow cannabis for medical purposes. The article also adds that there is evidence that cannabis oil destroys cancer, cures severe epilepsy, treats muscle spasms caused by multiple sclerosis, and saves lives. The National Cancer Institute has admitted cannabis oil kills cancer cells. Likewise, the National Institute on Drug Abuse has also admitted cannabis kills cancer cells and shrinks brain tumors. There are over 100 peer-reviewed studies, prominent medical organizations, and major government reports, which all combine to prove that marijuana is safe and effective in treating many serious ailments, including cancer. What this article also highlights, that perhaps many do not know, is that it is not always necessary to smoke cannabis or take the cannabis oil, both of which can cause someone to get high because the THC component has been activated through a heating process. In fact, just eating raw cannabis, including the juicing of it, can help prevent health issues from arising without the psychoactive effects. What is also becoming more understood are the long-term effects of cannabis on the brain. An article on the Exposing Truth website from November of 2014 reported that the debate can finally move out from the realm of opinion into scientific evidence, as researchers from the University of Texas just published their research into the long-term effects of marijuana use on the brain in PNAS, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The researcher helped dispel the dying myth that marijuana use lowers IQ, and actually provides more evidence to marijuana's potential role in fighting Alzheimer's. The research revealed that earlier onset of regular marijuana use leads to greater structural and functional connectivity in the brain. The most significant increases in connectivity appear as an individual begins using marijuana, with results showing that the severity of use is directly correlated to greater connectivity. These results will also need to be viewed in light of other research showing that cannabinoids actually promote brain cell growth and regrowth, neurogenesis, even in adults. Why would the global cabal want to keep cannabis criminalized? If this study is true, that cannabis can help promote growth or regrowth in the brain, this would mean that people would be able to think critically even more than they do already. and this alone represents a threat to those who have been in control. However, for those who may not have access to cannabis from a source that they trust, one may also choose to do some research on the spike turmeric. As an article on the greenmedinfo.com website has reported on the potential health benefits that whole turmeric has in healing a damaged brain. In the show summary, I will also include a link to a YouTube video showing how cannabis has helped to calm down a man with Parkinson's disease. As I have stated countless times on this newscast, hemp and cannabis can change the picture of life on this planet. Stuart Miner, writing for The Guardian on February 4th, agrees with me. He reports the following. Imagine a plant that cuts cholesterol, reduces our exposure to toxins, can ease joint inflammation, proves more durable than concrete, and can provide the economy with much-needed jobs for farmers and manufacturers. This wonder of the world exists, and it's hemp, but it's illegal to grow in America. Hemp and marijuana both are cannabis plants. In fact, both are cannabis sativa. Hemp, however, contains virtually no THC, which is the psychoactive component in pot, so smoking it will not get you stoned. Yet, industrial hemp has endured 80 years of purgatory and prohibition at the hands of the government. Hemp has been hailed as the little plant that could for centuries, for making fabric, rope, sails, paper, and canvas. Hemp plants require less chemical spraying than cotton, soy, corn, and wheat. It can help reduce soil degradation by faring better with less water and in drier climates. Paper made from hemp could help reduce deforestation and requires fewer chemicals for processing than wood pulp. Hemp fabric has antibacterial qualities that can help it fight staph infections in hospitals. It's not just the U.S. that can turn itself around. It is any community in any country that seeks to take control of its future, instead of being dependent upon people, organizations, and institutions that profit from not allowing people and communities access to these kinds of solutions. John Trudell was a Native American rights activist, musician, actor, poet, and protector of the earth who passed away in 2015. Ironically, hemp was not only legal in America's past, but for a time the federal government actually required farmers to produce industrial hemp as part of the original plan to turn the United States of America into an industrial global powerhouse. Many of the nation's founding documents were even written on hemp paper, again highlighting the remarkable history of hemp and casting suspicion on the reasons given for its prohibition. In 2011, Trudell gave the following explanation of why hemp is the king of all crops and why the world simply cannot survive without it. In simple, direct language, Trudell explains why a hemp-based economy would be much more advantageous for our world than a fossil fuels-based economy. The message is especially prescient at a time when Native Americans are engaged in a struggle to prevent oil pipeline progress in America's wild lands, as hemp offers an incredibly salient alternative to oil. In the show summary will be a video from Trudell explaining the values of hemp and why it has been criminalized. Governments are against hemp and cannabis because they have been hijacked and controlled by corporate interests, including big pharma, big medicine, big oil, and supported by big media. So why is big pharma against cannabis legalization? Two reasons in particular. One, as a natural substance, it cannot be patented, and therefore big pharma cannot profit from the sale of it. Therefore, the natural compound must be criminalized in order to allow a less beneficial synthetic compound to be made that can be patented and therefore used to get corporate profits. Cannabis alone has the potential to bury the pharmaceutical industry unless they can get control of the market, so they can trick the less informed people into buying their products because they are not informed enough to know just how dangerous pharmaceutical products are. Thankfully, this is also changing. An article on the AOL website from the UK reported last June that cannabis users seeking treatment often have an expertise about the drug which is leaving those trying to help them lagging behind, a conference has been told. Dr. Mark Monahan, a lecturer in criminology and social policy at Loughborough University, told the delegates, "There is this inverted expertise around cannabis in which the users have all the up-to-date knowledge of the local markets and the service providers are lagging behind. The providers are slightly lagging behind in terms of their knowledge base. Because they are lagging behind, they don't have intelligence on what the consumers are using. It creates this situation where they don't really know what to do." This may seem surprising to some, but it really should not be a surprise. The medical profession has, for a very long time, been out of touch with the healing process. It could be argued effectively that the medical profession is not interested at all in maintaining health. They are only interested in diagnosing disease. The medical profession abandoned the oath to do no harm decades ago. Every day, the profession does harm to people on multiple levels. Money can only be made when there is sickness and disease. It is exactly the same with global peace. Money can only be made when there is only war and conflict, not true peace. This is how the people of the world are beginning to turn the tables on those who have been enslaving us. They are becoming informed and empowered on numerous levels, not just with the cannabis issue. This is where the people will be able to win, even as Monsanto and Bayer threaten to take over the cannabis industry. This unfortunate news was reported on February 5th through the Anon HQ website as they wrote the following. The $66 million merger between Monsanto and Bayer has a lot of people watching. The potential legalization of marijuana also has a lot of people watching, including the CEOs of Monsanto and Bayer. And George Soros. Ah yes, there is that name Soros again. The merger, as reported time and again, is the largest agricultural merger of all times. The Bayer-Monsanto merger will result in a 29% ownership of the global seed market and a quarter of the pesticide market. If you throw in the other giants, DuPont and Dow, with their own merger, and Syngenta, 64% of the world's pesticides and seed market are controlled by these three corporations alone. Now, with the latest tug-of-war debate about the legalization of marijuana, even if just for medicinal purposes, has piqued the interests of Bayer-Monsanto conglomerate. In late January, Monsanto announced they had created their first GMO strain of marijuana at the corporate facility in St. Louis, Missouri. Here is where the corruption begins to get exposed. The article quotes lawyer and marijuana law specialist Edmund Grunch as saying that a major player as Monsanto could bring confidence within government and towards investors in the market if it were to own a large part of the exploitable lands and commercial products. In the wake of this announcement at the end of January, the creation of a synthetic GMO strain of cannabis that can be patented and profited from, comes the news this week that a Republican Party bill has been introduced into the U.S. Congress that will finally reschedule marijuana and deschedule CBD, the medicinal component within cannabis. Of course, this would only happen after a more dangerous product has been created and patented. This, by itself, sends a very strong message that governments are controlled and that they are not genuinely interested in health, but only interested in catering to the interests of corporations and of the big cartels, such as pharma, medicine, media, and others. In the show summary will also be some links from last week as a refresher to share with family and friends. The key is to become really informed about the full value and benefit of both cannabis and hemp, and to understand the differences between the two, and how both can contribute to a better world for everyone. Everyone, that is, except those who have been profiting from the criminalizing of cannabis and hemp and preventing humanity from achieving its full potential. As we become more informed, we will have the power to challenge our political leaders because we will understand the issues better than they do, and thus pressure will be on them to listen and act instead of catering only to corporate interests that seek to keep people sick, in debt, and in fear. Many are actively no longer choosing to buy into that fear. In this week's final words, it is unfortunate perhaps that I do have to repeat certain things many times over. Of course, there are two reasons for this, actually three. The first reason is that there may be always new listeners who need to hear what has been said in the past. The second reason is that it is a good refresher for listeners because each listener may have a new friend who might benefit from the information shared. The third reason is that by repeating certain information, it also helps me to remember the things that are important, but it also allows me to check in with myself to see if the information I have shared still resonates as truth for me in the current moment of now. Many beautiful souls are struggling financially because standing up against the criminal elites of the world is currently not a very lucrative profession. I would like to believe that it will be someday soon, but not currently in this moment. Many souls are struggling emotionally, trying to find friends, companions, and partners who think and feel the same way about the world, or at the very least want to learn more about what is not working so they can try to begin making a difference. It is a very lonely journey that many of us have signed up for. For many people, just having a companion to share the journey would make all the other stresses and frustrations bearable. There are incredible stresses dealing with the current paradigm while this global cabal still has some degree of control left. There are incredible stresses dealing with living and existing outside of the status quo. The question becomes, which stresses would you rather deal with? One may choose to stay attached to the current paradigm and its stresses. This individual may end up dealing with being laid off because the company is replacing human labor with robots. This individual may end up dealing with a broken relation because neither partner was fully prepared and committed to working through the challenges that put the stresses on the relation in the first place. One or both souls in that partnership may still have unrealistic expectations about how things are in the world today without acknowledging that the world we once lived in is gone. For some, this will be cause for alarm, distress, and incredible fear. For others who have been witness to the changes so far and who have become even a little informed as to what is going on in the world, these people are mostly going to welcome the major changes that are now necessary, even if it means a period of time of hardship. Face it, we are already in a period of hardship. The last 100 years have been nothing but hardship because humanity has been enslaved to criminally fraudulent systems of banking and commercial law. For those who are ignorant of their slavery, it is possible for them to keep doing their day-to-day routine because they do not know what they do not know. For those who are awakening, they are seeking friends, groups, partners, companions, and even colleagues with whom they can create a trusted circle and network, so that as the more challenging parts of these changes begin to happen, they will have a support network where people can help each other, comfort each other, empower each other, and listen to each other. I see a day coming, and given the way things are unfolding in the world right now, I'm beginning to think that this day may not be too far away, where the cabal is going to try to play its remaining cards in creating hardship for humanity and the planet. They have done a grand job of enslaving humanity and destroying our planet up to this point. Now that humans worldwide are waking up to this, many are searching for their role and their purpose in these global changes. The irony of the times we live in are both exciting yet sad, funny yet horrifically tragic. Yes, I bet a few of you are starting to think about the beginning of the book, Tale of Two Cities. It is indeed the best of times and the worst of times. For those seeing their power, control, and wealth disappearing, these times are going to be tragic. For those who are beginning to get their first tastes of growing freedom for our planet, the times are exciting, even if some frustration, stress, sadness, and loneliness are mixed into the equation. It is an age of wisdom and yet an age of foolishness. In a more cosmic sense, it is a season of light and a season of darkness. Depending upon one's worldview right now, we have everything before us and we have nothing before us. Before an individual surrenders to the realization that his or her personal world has to change because he or she has hit rock bottom, so too must this happen on various collective levels, but also on a global collective level. Good people are being criticized, demonized, threatened, killed, or otherwise discredited for attempting to make the world a better place. Take Tulsi Gabbard, for example. Gabbard is a Democratic congresswoman who represents Hawaii. She quit her job with the Democratic National Party to throw her support behind Bernie Sanders. She recently went to Syria on a fact-fighting mission, as was reported earlier in the newscast. People in both the Democratic and the Republican parties have been criticizing her for going, and they are attempting to discredit her as quickly as possible. According to an article by Caitlin Johnstone on the newslog.com website on February 6th, the most revolutionary thing an American leader can do today is stand up to the military-industrial complex and throw a monkey wrench in the corporatist wars of the oligarchs. Not only is war itself one of the most profitable industries in the U.S. economy, but the entire neoliberal economic scheme is premised upon its ability to prop itself up with the barrel of a gun. The only reason America's economy is still officially standing tall after obliterating its middle class and funneling all new income to the wealthiest of the wealthy is because it's been able to force the governments of the world to submit to the dominance of the U.S. dollar using the carrot of military alliance and the stick of military retaliation. This also was referenced earlier in the newscast. This psychopathic balancing act depends upon America's corporate crony politicians falling in line with the agenda, and Congresswoman Gabbard is refusing to fall in line with that agenda. As the article suggests, if the people in power do not stop Gabbard now, there is a very strong possibility that she could become the 46th President of the United States. Well, she would only become the 46th President if the corporate U.S. government somehow manages to remain intact until the next election. If a U.S. Republic government is announced, as some believe it will be, then there will be a whole new structure to deal with, and it is very possible that Gabbard could play a role in that as well. Isn't it amazing? Many people are examples, but Gabbard also highlights the truth behind the following quote. In times of universal deceit, telling the truth can be a revolutionary thing. She exposed the lies and crimes of the U.S. in Syria, and power brokers certainly did not like her going over there without their authorization. Such are the things that some courageous souls must now do if the world is to become better for the rest of humanity. The hypocrisy of politicians, bankers, lawyers, judges, police officers, journalists, priests, corporate CEOs, and others has reached a breaking point where the people of the world are fed up with their lies, their crimes, and their BS of pretending to care for humanity and the planet, when every choice that has been made is very directly threatening the lives of all humans upon this planet. Although it may not seem like it or feel like it, the consciousness of humanity and the planet is rising, and if one is looking for it, it is not really hard to see. It can be seen in the fear and anger of those who are so attached to the current paradigm that they are hysterical about losing all their status and material possessions. It can be seen in the amount of groups appearing around the world to discuss and act upon global peace and healing. Meanwhile, the Buddhist monks will continue to do their meditation in the mountains away from the world. There are courageous people in every country seeking to help share wisdom of a new golden age of consciousness. And yes, there are still people who either knowingly or unknowingly are prepared to physically fight for something, even if they may not be exactly sure of what it is they are fighting for. As well, there are also the galactic families that are apparently around Earth at this time, helping as much as they are allowed to do, until permission is given to do more. In this time, each soul will have to explore whether he or she is ready to let the old part of her or himself die in order to open up and be birthed into the new consciousness. Believe me when I tell you that this can be as easy or as hard as you choose to make it. I say this because I think I have chosen the hard way, and although it is not always pleasant, it is something that I know I have to do because I really do not want to live the remainder of this lifetime as a slave to people who are killing humanity and destroying our planet for profit, power, and greed. No one is wrong or bad if she or he is not ready to choose this. Each soul must choose this at a time when he or she is ready, prepared, and willing to do so. Thankfully, this is happening much more quickly at this time, and perhaps it is this energy that is finally pushing the global cabal to the brink of its own destruction, an event that will finally remove the chains that have held humanity back from the full knowing of our full potential, as humans on Earth, but also as awakening citizens of a new galactic star nation. Create a wonderful week until our next moment of now. So that is a sample of the unfolding higher consciousness news around the world this week. Cosmic Vision News is broadcast weekly from the CosmicVisionNews.com website. Links to stories used in this broadcast are published in the show summary, which is also available on the website. CVN can be followed through its Facebook page, Minds page, and YouTube channel, as well as on Twitter, Google+, and LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm Jeffrey West, reminding you that in times of universal deceit, telling the truth can be a revolutionary thing. Until our next moment of now, stay grounded in love, hold the vision of light and peace in your hearts, and keep your eyes to the skies. Disclosure is unfolding all around you. Namaste.